Hey, good evening. Wanted to ask you guys about what you guys think about like some Second Temple literature, sort of like Ben Sira, Enoch, things like that. Because I've been listening to Daniel Boyarin talk about like Enoch and sort of like how that might be connected to how the rabbis may have responded to Christians in the Trinity and things like that. So was wondering if you had an opinion on things like that. I know it has nothing to do with halakha, but
No, I hear you.
maybe on midrash and things like that.
There's more than one book of Enoch, although I think one may have crept into the Dead Sea Scrolls. I know I made a video on the Enoch calendar, which ties into with the calendar that appears in the Book of Jubilees. Books in the Jewish world weren't understood like Christians view biblical books nowadays. Only because something is not canonized doesn't mean the rabbis didn't find inspiration within it and didn't quote it in the Talmud. For example, Ben Sira is quoted in the Talmud, but it wasn't canonized. Sefer HaMaccabeim, the Book of Maccabees, is also highly respected in the Jewish world. It just wasn't canonized. Only because something is canonized doesn't mean that it's divinely inspired. Now, holy in Judaism means something different. It just really means set apart and sanctioned. That means the rabbis kind of vouch for it, but not that it was written by God. And people in the Christian world, though, drive out demons quoting the Book of Esther. They elevate every book in the canon to the level of Exodus and Deuteronomy, books that contain what was actually received at Har Sinai, directly from God, and not books that were just put together by men, and many times from memory throughout the ages, right? Canon, or the books that appear in the set of the Dead Sea Scrolls, don't really match up completely with the Masoretic text. There's many variants in that as well. There is no issue. I'm not against anyone studying any book if it brings you closer to God, as long as they know that it's not source material. And that goes for the New Testament, that goes for the Zohar, that goes for the Tanya. If it brings you closer to God and it makes that bond with Torah even stronger, I'm all for it. Okay. Now, people who are new to Judaism, who want to enter the rabbinate, who want to be able to discuss Judaism in an intelligent manner, in a sophisticated manner on YouTube, I encourage them to hop into halakha, just because that it's equivalent to swinging a hammer instead of swinging a fly swatter when it comes to getting your point across. But in terms of devotional stuff, there's a lot of beautiful stuff in Kabbalah. There's a lot of beautiful stuff in what's called apocrypha and pseudepigrapha. I don't think in the Jewish world people walked around mocking other books. Now, the Rambam, I remember there was a book that the Rambam attacked. It slips my mind, but it was for the Kabbalistic ideas that they peddled. And the Rambam was the most popular philosopher in the Jewish world, which means that he wasn't a very agreeable person. But that doesn't mean that Judaism as a whole frowns upon you studying anything that contradicts Torah. I'm not saying puts a spin on an idea. This is what, when I see rabbis online attacking other guys just because they put a spin on an idea, even people like Rav Dror, who caters to a certain audience, as long as it's not directly going against halakha and the drash, the actual words in the Torah, then there's wiggle room there for you to entertain your audience. And I think that we have to be a lot more open to people who do that. So I'm not against someone studying the Book of Enoch, but right when they're saying, oh, okay, I'm going to toss out the lunar calendar for solar calendar and keep Shabbat on different days now, and B was called Tivrosh Min Tibor, like separate myself from the community just because the Book of Enoch says it, and then they're going to start believing that Enoch actually wrote it, and saying, oh, well, now this book carries more weight than the Torah because Enoch existed before Exodus chapter 22. So that's already when people start getting silly. I don't think anyone believes that Enoch wrote the Book of Enoch, okay? Only because it happens to be called the Book of Enoch. Let's be smart and realize what's the base of our religion. The base of our religion is Torah from Sinai. Within that Torah, it specifically says, don't add or take away from these books. Now, that doesn't mean that you can add other books for pleasure. It just means that from an authoritative perspective, it cannot override those books in any way. It can add new theological ideas that are binding on every Jew to believe. That's all it means. Tehillim, the poetry there is beautiful, but it's the devotional expressions of one man. Like really, King David didn't write all of the Book of Psalms. If he wrote any of it, I think that's just a tradition, but it's fine. It's beautiful, and any of you guys could contribute in the same fashion, but someone shouldn't be, from a Kabbalistic perspective, driving out demons quoting a verse from Psalms, right? Because it's not Torah. It seems like Psalm Tehillim is amplifying Torah. It's amplifying that seminal moment of God bringing Israel out of Egypt. It wants you to put yourself in the place of those Hebrews and saying that if God could do it for them, he could do it for me. And that's what's powerful, and that's what makes you love Torah. But people start idealizing these works. It's funny. This is similar to the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchot Avodah Zarah, where he gives the history of idolatry. That first, in the beginning, everyone was a believer in God, and they were marveling at the works of God, i.e. the stars, the moon, the sun, and they venerated these things to such a level that they ultimately began worshiping these things. And this is really what has happened with the Jewish Bible. People now worship the Bible, and don't take it for what it's worth. Every book, including the books of the prophets, are there to amplify the Torah. They're there to bring you back to the Torah. They're not there to add to the Torah in any way, because it says if a prophet adds or take away, you take that prophet out and you stone him. A prophet can add to the Torah. He's only there to bring you back, put you on the proper derech. That's it. But nowadays they're like, no, I believe this because it says in Sefer Yehezkel. I'm like, come on. Do you know it says in the Talmud that they weren't going to include the book of Ezekiel in the canon? They weren't going to include Shir Hashirim, Kohelet, Mishlei. They weren't going to include it. Why? Because they disagreed on whether it contradicted the Torah or not in certain concepts. And then Rabbi Akiva steps in and starts reinterpreting. No, Shir Hashirim, it's not one man loving on a woman, but it's God loving on the Jewish people, this and that. So they included it in the canon. So it shows that this is not God-breathed like the Christians have been teaching it. Also, Beit Shammai never accepted Megillas Esther. Beit Shammai, these guys had smicha, and they didn't include the book of Esther as part of the canon. Now, did they throw it away? Of course not. Something could not be canonical and still be respected. I'm sure they still read the Megillah on Purim. It doesn't have to be part of the canon to be beneficial, but this is something that people can't understand nowadays. They have this all or nothing mentality. They get stuck on what's called first stage thinking. It's all or nothing. You either have to believe that the whole oral law was given on Mount Sinai, even what your rabbi said today was given on Mount Sinai, or then don't even bother being Jewish. It's funny because the rabbis in the Talmud didn't teach it like this. They also constantly made a distinction. What's from the rabbis? What's from the Torah? What's just a custom? What's binding? The Rambam, in every book of Mishnah Torah, he lays down rabbinic laws, Torah laws, positive commandments, negative commandments. But nowadays it's all lumped in together and it's all given on Mount Sinai. Well, I mean, can you blame other religions for saying, oh, well, my book is also from God? Well, no, my book is also from God. I mean, come on, guys. You know, the Torah, and really technically the commandments within the Torah, because that's what the Torah says, that's what was given to us from God. And he tells us that he's going to bring us prophets when we begin to emulate the nations that we've displaced to bring us back to this Torah. And that's it. And he wants us to spend all our free time trying to make this world a better place and just be normal. Have a family, drink a beer. Why not just have fun?
We have Rav, we have Moshe over here. He's like giving us finger signs. I think he's itching to speak. I think he has a question for you. What's going on?
Me?
Yeah, you're doing like funny hand signs and like.
No, I'm loving everything he's saying.